Hi, and welcome everybody. I'm Ross Benjamin. You're watching the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast, as always, on a weekly basis, a couple times a week, actually. I'm joined by Mr. Doug Upstone of DocSports.com, one of the finest handicappers in the country. And Doug, it's wild card weekend. Well, it's not really wild card weekend because we have a Monday night wild card game for the first time. Looking forward to this week. Doug, these 3 days coming up in the NFL playoffs. How about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Ross. This is going to be a little bit fun, to have an extra day from that standpoint. And now that we have more games, we started it last year, and obviously this is going to be what it's going to be going forward. Makes a little bit of sense, but obviously puts the team. You run into this anyways, but it puts these teams at playing on Monday at a disadvantage,
Sure.
especially if they have to go on the road. The following week if they wouldn't have to go on the road. So yes, but it does add a different element of and let's face it, the NFL's about money and exposure, so it makes perfect sense to me.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure the fans have no problem with it. The other part of that equation is the teams that are playing on Saturday could make the same case. We just played
right.
Sunday and we got 1 day less of rest, especially in this climate right now, Doug. Somebody gets COVID or tests positive for COVID on a Monday or has contact tracing with COVID and they're put into quarantine. That's one less day they have to test negative and be eligible to play. So there's 6 of one and a half dozen of the other, the way you could look at those Saturday and Monday games. But NFL playoff betting a lot different than the regular season. Anyway, from my perspective, curious to hear yours.
Well, I have a question for you, Ross, and this is just a
Sure.
general, because I've completed what I'm going to, what selections I'm going to make, as I'm sure, or if you haven't, you're close, I'm sure.
Yep.
Do you find, I guess I should say, I find, okay, that there is less statistical way of say evaluation, probably the better word, than there are situational plays to me for the playoffs. And so because we're talking about teams that are, let's just say, in my opinion, are closer, okay, in terms of, with not only their records, but, their statistical information. There's not a great difference. Now, there are some differences, but there's not great differences. And so you end up, at least I do, going more towards situational plays where things, let's just say historically, and for example, how the wild card underdogs have done recently, that you have to, I think, have stronger consideration than, maybe some statistical information. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, all that means nothing at this time of year. Now, look at you can get a game like Buffalo, New England, which you're going to cover on your free pick and say, well, both of these teams statistically are 1-2 in defense, but they're also going to be playing in 8-degree weather and the total's 44. So, it's they don't give money away. I would pay more attention to like the wind conditions in Buffalo that night. But I agree, Doug, not to get off course here, is that if you start looking at statistics when it comes to playoff matchups, these teams are all worthy and all good, which leads me to this. Usually you'll have one team on wild card weekend. I'm going to refer to it as that. I don't care about the Monday night game. I do care, but I mean, I'm not going to keep mincing my words with that. So the bottom line is we're not seeing any home underdogs this year in the wild card round. And that's unusual because usually you'll have that one division winner that finishes 9-7 when we had the 16-game season, and they'll be facing a real good wild card team like Arizona, for example, who finished 11-5. Okay, and you get the wild card team that would be the road favorite in that situation, but we're not seeing it this year.
Yeah, and I think it goes along to the path of what we've talked about all year, Ross, is that even though underdogs covered the majority of the time this season, is that the good teams had better records all the way through. Maybe not great records. Nobody had just 2 losses, for example.
Yeah.
But, and then versus then the poorer teams, okay, who they're, the Jacksonvilles, the Detroits, there's some really bad football teams. So with that, you just didn't have the same mix that, like you said, that we're used to having.
Yeah.
And so the better teams had better records, just across the board. And you figure like, even a team like Arizona, 11, now they were, a good team all year, but to finish 11-6 in this case, that's a pretty good record for a team as a wild card.
Yeah, I forgot about that 17th game.
Yeah.
That's right. So anyway, yeah, Arizona's a perfect example though, Doug. I mean, if you look at their statistics for the entire year, they're going to be up, especially offensively, they're going to be up there amongst the leaders in most offensive statistics. But, you look at how they finished the year and not so much. It's a team that really struggled down the stretch. I mean, keep in mind, that's a team that needed to beat Seattle on the last day of the season, regular season, to win the NFC West. They catch a major break with the Rams blowing a 17-0 lead, and they can't get it done against the Seahawks team who entered that game. It's, I believe, 6-10. So, yeah, I mean, you look at Arizona's statistics and you compare it to the Rams. They're similar in a lot of ways, but the Rams didn't exactly finish strong either. But you get what I'm trying to say.
Right.
When you have to look at everything, and you just can't look at the overall statistics in playoff matchups. Anything else you want to?
Yeah, well, a good example, Ross, is this, and I got some angles here just to throw out to you, and you can comment on them. And they're from my good friend Steve Makinen, and Steve and I used to work together at StatFox many moons ago, and he now is he does the newsletter for VSiN, has for years, and I did that for a few years myself, writing there. But there's some really compelling information in their newsletter, so I was going to just share a few things and let people know, and then you can comment on them as well. One of the things that jumps off about recent history in the playoffs is I'll call it the lowest seed. Previously, it was the 6th seed. Now it's the 7th seed. And in the last 4 years, those teams 7-1 straight up and 8-0 against the spread. So when you look at Kansas or Pittsburgh, that's what I was trying to think of. Yeah. Pittsburgh in particular, that's got a big number, as does Philadelphia. And when you think about that, that kind of gets interesting, if you take things, not saying that, every angle can lose at any time, but, there's something there, and you would have to believe maybe not outright winners, but you'd have to think at least one of those teams have a very good chance based on that, to cover this week.
Yeah, it would be interesting because, again, we're getting that extra team in the wild card start. Well, that started last year. But I'd be more interested, I'd like to see the number 6. I think that more it's applicable to the number 6 seed, in my opinion. Because,
right. I mean, previously.
Yeah. And I think it would be more applicable to the 6th seed again last year and this year, because that extra team qualifies we didn't have before. So now you're getting a team like Philadelphia who qualifies at 9-8. And we get a team like who's the other one? Pittsburgh, who qualified at 9-7-1. So, I mean, much different scenario, not much different, but something to keep in mind. Who's the number 6 seeds again? Okay. So in the AFC, that would be Kansas City is playing. No, excuse me. Who's the number 6 seed in the NFC? And
offhand, I don't have it here with me.
Yeah, let me take.
If you hold on a second, I can.
I think it would be more applicable to. This is just my opinion. Let's see here. It would be Las Vegas is 5. New England, Buffalo. That's a. New England is number 6.
Yep.
In the AFC, in the NFC we have. Philly and Tampa, that's a 2-7.
San Francisco?
San Francisco, Dallas. So yeah, you got San Francisco and New England, which I think are 2 real dangerous teams for the teams they're facing this week. I would again be more concentrating on those teams than the extra number 7 seed that they've added last year. Does that make sense at all? I mean,
Oh yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah, well, they're better teams. I mean,
yeah,
so that's the thing. And so you have a better team going against a team that, in theory, and the spreads, of course, correlate that on those games. So yeah, so I think there's a lot there. It's an interesting thing to
yeah,
think about.
yeah.
And then just underdogs in general, okay, have done great recently in wild card games at uh, 15-5, I believe it is. Yeah, 15-5. Okay,
Wow.
in the first round, the wild card. So that's been super strong there. And there seems to be quite a few. I think even this week, to consider from that standpoint. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I always look for an underdog, Doug, and my adage has always been: you look for an underdog that you just don't feel strongly they can cover, but they have a realistic chance of winning outright. So when it comes to playoff football, you just mentioned how well the six seeds have done over the years. I mean, certainly that's something to consider, on any given Sunday, and even more so when it comes to playoff time. So, and
Absolutely. No.
and
Yeah.
the other thing I caught, Doug, you mentioned Fox Sports sheets, and I subscribe to that. Comes up. I know you do as well. A lot of pertinent information there that you could latch on, especially if you're a writer like yourself or doing videos a lot
Yeah.
like myself. You come up with a lot of statistical information that the viewers or readers are very interested in. Wild card round games, they have listed as 52 and 22 to the under, I believe, since 2012. I'd have to look. But again, that's more like 26 and 11 because they're counting both teams in the
Right.
matchup as going under. But, again, it proves the fact that not only are underdogs covering, but games are staying in the low scoring variety for the most part in recent years. So, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you lose your train of thought? I hope you still have that great idea you were about to bring up.
No, well, I don't know if it's a great idea, but it was exactly the same as yours.
Oh,
That's what I
okay.
was just going to bring up next. So yes, and so in the last 9 years, 26-11, excuse me, on unders. So so these games, if underdogs and unders, seem to have or have had some excellent value for the wild card weekend, Ross.
Yeah, especially if it's a fail low, it's a short favorite. Okay, if you're getting a favorite of -4 or less, it's they tend to go to the under within that statistic more than, for example, a team like Kansas City who's laying 12 and a half. If you look at the history of double-digit favorites in the playoffs, especially home double-digit favorites, you're looking at more overs than unders that have occurred over the years. So it's a fine line, and it involves some research. And don't forget, folks, there's nothing that's a no-brainer. These are trends, okay? And like Doug says, sometimes you have to throw the statistics out and just look at the individual matchup as its own single entity, and then evaluate from there. So any other stuff on the agenda do you want to
No,
bring
I
up?
think that's about all I got. So, Ross, I'm going to hop right into my free pick here for the upcoming weekend. And I'm talking, you'd mentioned earlier, I'm talking about Buffalo and New England, which is going to be the Saturday night game. And so this is the third meeting, of course, between these teams, and they have split the first two, and both teams won on the road. Speaking of matchups, one of the things for me that's a big difference in this game is the quarterback position. Is that you got Josh Allen, okay, who was I think I don't know if he was great all year, but he was solid all year and well above average, okay. And as they came down the stretch, 4-0, 3-0-1 against the spread. And even though sometimes in those games they labored a little bit, you would know this better even than I, it seemed that was almost of disinterest against some of the opponents that they faced. And then the second half of the game, they took over and got the job done. Now, Matt Jones for New England, I think he had a wonderful first season, okay, for a rookie. I mean, I thought he was really impressive. Seems like a very modest, very humble guy. Didn't want any accolades. He just wanted his team to win. But his production fell off in the second half, or excuse me, the last quarter of the season. And to me, that's kind of a bigger deal here, especially for a team that's going to be on the road. Sure, they're familiar with New England, okay, but it goes both. I'm sorry, they're familiar with Buffalo, but it goes both ways. Both teams are very familiar with each other. And I see the similar aspects of what's happened in the previous two games. I think that New England will have the ability to run the ball probably pretty well at times, throw the ball okay, but I see them ending up with more field goals than touchdowns. Okay. Conversely, with Josh Allen, because the running game overall has gotten better, and then the element that he brings to the game with his ability to run, I think that can turn into, in many cases, as we saw here, big plays that help Buffalo score touchdowns. Okay. The other aspect, I look at this game, first time quarterbacks in the playoffs, 17-37 straight up. 17-36-1 against the spread. And unless you feel New England's going to win the game, here's something you have to know. In the last 56 wild card games, the outright winner of the game is 47-8-1 against the spread. I don't think New England could win the game. So I love that number, Ross. So I'm going to say Buffalo minus the 4 on Saturday night for today's free pick on the wild card round.
And I would venture to say if you get in the parameter which Buffalo's in at -4 right now, that 47-8 would probably improve even better than that, if you can imagine. And yeah, I mean, two things. Mac Jones, to me, I've been saying it all week long, and I got to be careful here because, I'm a Western New York native, Doug, and been a huge Buffalo Bills fan since I've been a kid. And that part of me, sometimes the professionalism gets away from me, and that's why most times than not, I don't use anything in Buffalo Bills games because, you really have to do a check of yourself and look in the mirror and say, do I like this game because of my heart or my head? And if I could avoid those types of situations, I do. But having said that, I've been saying all week when people discuss the game with me, I think that you bring up a great point. Mac Jones, to me, has hit the rookie wall. Well, remember, folks, these kids coming out of college, and he is a rookie. And he did play in Alabama in a pro-style offense. But Alabama gets maybe 15 games if they go to the national title game and the SEC title game. You're going into game number 19, week number 20 now. And that's where you start to see the rookies sort of hit the wall, is near where it would have been near the end of their college schedule. And then all of a sudden, now this is a 24/7 job for them, as opposed to college where the stakes aren't quite that high and the workload isn't quite that much during the week as compared to what you get in the NFL. So yeah, I agree. And then one thing with Buffalo you mentioned is with their defense, it really improved pass rush over the last month. And when Josh Allen has struggled of late, it's been in high wind conditions. So I would pay attention to the wind conditions in Buffalo. It's going to be cold. It's going to be a high of 8 degrees and a low of 2 degrees, Doug. Not Arizona-like, let's put it that way. And the winds are calling for gusts up to 14 miles an hour. But when they say gust up to 14 miles an hour, that's an occasional high wind, okay? I think that you saw Josh Allen, what he did to New England at New England when the weather conditions were conducive to the passing game. Buffalo's a pass-first offense, and that's why they lost that game against New England, on top of the fact they couldn't stop the run. So I agree with you. How's that?
That sounds good. And I'll give you one bit of useless trivia. Okay. That game is on January the 15th. And this tells you how sports continues to evolve. That also happened to be the day of the first Super Bowl between
Green Bay and Kansas City. And I hate to admit it, but I remember watching that game.
Yes, indeed. So, yep.
Yeah, Boyd Dollar, or was it Boyd? No, it was Max McGee, who caught like 2 touchdown passes, and he was drunk out of his mind the night before, didn't think he was going to play, and he got the call to play, and he had a terrific game. That's not to suggest to you youngsters out there that a prerequisite to having a good game is going out and getting hammered the night before. So anyway, I'm going to take a look at the Pittsburgh and Kansas City game, and Kansas City a 12.5-point favorite. And I think it's justified. And, we talked about underdogs and how much they've won in recent years in the wild card round. Well, here's something for you, Doug. Playoff home favorites of 10.5 or more since 2011. How about 9-0 straight up and against the spread, and winning by 18.7 points per game. So when you get into these parameters with these high double-digit favorites, especially 10.5 or more, okay, specifically, no favorite has lost in that situation since 2011. I mean, not a lot of situations, but like I was alluding to, where I was going with when you were bringing that up, I think when you're looking at those underdogs, you want to look at the lower end of the table if you're looking for underdog value. Kansas City did defeat Pittsburgh 36-14 at home back on the 26th of December, not too long ago. Dominated the game statistically, outgained them by 77 yards. It was a +3 turnover margin. And this is a Pittsburgh team 0-3 straight up in ATS in their last 3 non-division away games, losing by 21.7 points per contest. Kansas City, contrarily, 4-0 straight up in ATS in their last 4 at home, winning by 22 points a game. And this is also a Kansas City offense over the last 5 games, folks, has been absolutely on fire, looking like the Kansas City Chiefs of old. 35.4 points scored per game, 410.6 yards gained per game. And you compare that to Pittsburgh over the last 4, 17.7 points per game and only 314. Actually, they've gained 314 yards or less in each of their last 4 games. I'm going to lay to 12.5 here. Kansas City minus 12.5 over Pittsburgh. And Doug Upstone likes the Buffalo Bills minus 4 over the New England Patriots. Let's keep this winning streak alive. And Doug, what do you got coming up this week? How you been doing of late, and where could the good folks out there find you?
Well, I as I mentioned on Monday when we talked on Monday, and by the way, where we gave out 2 nice free winners in college basketball, just to throw that out there. But yeah, I mentioned then it's been another fine NFL season for me. 40-28 on the year, up over $5,000 in terms of $5,000 profit in terms of units, and so that's been very good. And the best bets, the weekly best bets, have been super at 14-4. And of course, I will have that again at Doc Sports. Got a big 7-unit play coming up, and some other strong plays, 3 altogether, in fact, for football. So you can take advantage of that. And then, hey, the hockey continues to roll. 23-13 run. Okay, had another easy winner on Wednesday night. Looking for another on Thursday. And college basketball, having a very nice week in college basketball. So of course, we got a full big card coming on Saturday. So that would be, I'll have a lot of plays coming up, and I know you will too, Ross.
Absolutely. You got to love Saturday. Last week, I went 4-0 in Saturday college basketball. And again, we as handicappers love Saturday college basketball because you know why? You get like 130 games on a Saturday, right? And good handicappers, if you give them that much to choose from and they do their work, it's not guaranteed, but it's more probable they're going to find better betting value on a Saturday than any other day of the week in college basketball. You can find me at rbwins.com. If you want an NFL playoff package from me, give me a call, 781-571-0299. I accept all major credit cards. I do not employ salespeople. You will talk to me and me only. And also you can get my daily, weekly, monthly, and annual packages at my website. That's rbwins.com. R as in Ross, B as in Benjamin, WINS, like I do on a consistent basis.com. Again, for Doug Upstone and Ross Benjamin, we'd like to wish each and every one of you all the best of luck. Good luck and God bless, folks.